Crystal Tower Information Whiskey 2153 Zulu, wind 060 at 5.
076 Mike Juliet, this is departure radar contact.
Hazardous weather information from Minnesota available on flight service frequency.
You've dialed in the Flying Midwest podcast, connecting aviators from across America's heartland, sharing news, information, and events from around the region.
Calling Nancy 53 on over tower, roger, turn left heading 070, runway 9er, clear for takeoff.
Sit back, relax, and join our crew for some hangar talk as we discuss a wide variety of regional aviation topics.
Departure 71143, flying flag, runway 28 left, quick takeoff, left hand southbound.
And now, from our home at the Anoka County Blaine Airport, our checklist is complete, and we're ready for departure for another episode of the Flying Midwest podcast.
Contact departure, have your flight.
Welcome, everybody, to the Flying Midwest podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew, the Badger pilot, along with my other co-host who makes it all happen, Jim.
Oh, hello.
And the one who keeps our youthfulness of the show, Maddie.
Well, hello there, fellow kids.
How are we all doing?
She's the youth voice of this podcast.
Yes. Jim and I are the
Keep it real for the youth.
We appreciate all you guys tuning in and listening, and some of our loyal listeners might have noticed some changes to our programming lately. Jim, do you want to tell us what that's all about?
They probably didn't notice at all, but
I noticed.
Our one true listener, the Badger pilot.
Yeah.
Who's also a host. No, there might be just some timing changes. I mean, I've tried to put out episodes of this podcast for a while it was every other Sunday, and then it was every other Wednesday for a while. I will just be fairly candid right now. The program scheduling is going to be somewhat sporadic. I'm still going to try to be consistent with once every 2 weeks-ish, but the big thing that I'll talk about is there are some changes with the CFI training, particularly going from the PTS, or the Practical Test Standards, to the ACS, Airman Certification Standards. Now, all the other ratings, for the most part, have had that already, but with revisions they're doing with the ACS for the other ratings, now the CFI rating, or the flight instructor rating, is now moving into that space of being in the ACS world too. So admittedly, I panicked for a couple minutes of, oh no, what does this mean? There's no way I'm going to get a check right before May. However, it's not that huge of a deal as I've done some reading, but it did act as a kick in the pants a bit for me to quick drag on the CFI thing out and get this done. So ideally, I would like to meet a lot of you at Oshkosh with the CFI rating in hand. That is my goal. So with that, my training schedule is going to kick up a little bit, so that doesn't leave as much time for editing and putting the show together. So all that to say, please forgive us if we're a little sporadic with how we publish and the timeline. So we're still here. We're not going anywhere. It's just I might be busy. Such is life. There. Apology accepted? Yes? No? Maybe?
Did you just accept your own apology?
No, I was asking. No. I was asking if the apology is accepted and waiting for the listeners to respond. And I realized that this isn't going to get published for a while, so I'll never know. Well, enough about me. Badger, I was following your social medias, and it appears that you had a meetup with the one and only Ed and his lovely wife from the Flying Stampede, and you didn't bother inviting the rest of us. So do you care to explain yourself?
I'm going to go ahead and throw Ed under the bus on this one. He was the one So Ed sent me a text message pretty late one evening saying, hey, do you and your wife want to meet Caitlin and I down at Lake Lawn Airport and walk over to the resort and get some brunch? And so we did. And I thought about throwing it in the Discord and inviting some people, but I didn't want to step on Ed's toes and invite people.
Stomp on them. Who cares?
Yeah. So Ed and I met for brunch with our wives, and it was an awesome time. I had never been to Lake Lawn before. It's an awesome airport, super nice resort across the street.
How was the Eggs Benedict?
It's funny you ask. I looked for it. They do not have Eggs Benedict on the menu.
Then why did you go there?
I didn't know it at the time. I didn't. It actually worked out really well, though. My wife is not the most willing of flyers, and so it was a nice smooth day, and it was a really fairly short flight for us, so it worked out really well, and she handled it great. So that is why we went there, despite no Eggs Benedict. So I think we'll probably plan something in the near future, and I'll be sure to be the one planning it so that I can reach out to the folks in the Discord and let people know, hey, we're meeting on this day, this time. We're going to get brunch. They have Eggs Benedict. Let's all go.
Cool. I'm going to also give you an opportunity to redeem yourself here and make up for this misstep. How would you like to do that?
Yeah, so if you feel like you were left out of meeting me at a fly-in type event, we are actually putting together a Flying Midwest podcast fly-in camping meetup. The one thing set in stone for show right now is August 23rd through the 25th. We are 99% sure on the location, and there's some great things that we're working on to lock that in and have some amenities for those that show up. The plan would be tent camping. There's not really a whole lot as far as hotels or resorts in the area, but you do some tent camping and hanging out with other aviation enthusiasts and pilots. Mark your calendars for August 23rd through 25th. And we're looking at probably southern, western, south central-ish Wisconsin if this all works out.
Southern, central, southwest, northeast, westish.
Yeah. It's
all
not
the
Illinois.
directions.
It's not Illinois.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that we're not going to Illinois. I appreciate
so
that.
mark your calendars. I did put some feelers out in the Discord as well. I think the best way to get in touch with us would be the Discord for sure. So email us at flyingmidwestpodcast@gmail.com to get a link for the Discord. And if you're not a Discorder, but you are an emailer, you can always email me directly at thebadgerpilot@gmail.com. And I'm starting to gather a list of those that are showing up because we wouldn't want to outgrow this airport. I don't think we will, but you never know.
So both of you that are coming, let us know.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, both of you. Yeah. It'll be a good time. We got some cool stuff lined up.
Hey, Jim, can you pick up my dad on your way?
I'll think about it.
Okay.
Do you want me to have that in the podcast or not? For him to hear?
Yes.
I'm excited for the fly-in opportunity, so hope people will reach out to us and express some interest, and as we get more information and things solidify, we'll put that out. So thanks for working on that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Let's move into the next section of our episode. And speaking of section, right into the Pilot Quarters Sectional Showdown, brought to you by our friends over at Pilot Quarters. Badger, you want to talk to us about our last couple episodes? I know that we had one that was a bit of a goof, but we did have a real sectional showdown a couple weeks ago. What do we got for comments from the Peanut Gallery?
Yeah, so real quick, just for clarification, we hinted at it with the Brian Turner episode. That was a photoshopped glow plug symbol off of the dashboard of a diesel truck that I turned magenta. So now that we've cleared the air on that, let's talk about the one that Jim tried to stump us all with. And it looks like...
Yeah, what did we come up with?
Yeah. You can go to our Facebook page and see the post. And some of the comments to that, Delbert Lowe, a common commenter on our post,
And
says...
a patron?
And
Hey,
patron.
Tuffy Patron.
Dun, 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 dun. Says that it's a landing pad for aliens, or for those of us that grew up in the 70s or 80s, it's a rocket playground. And apparently he remembers living in the atomic age as a child.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Delbert.
Yancey, it's either Burchett or Burchett, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, says that's where the missile battery is located for the takedown aircraft entering a restriction area without permission.
I like it.
Larry Wiggins says it's a SAM or surface-to-air missile battery location. Don't enter unless you're don't enter at less than Mach 4.
My sundowner won't get that fast, right?
Probably not.
Okay.
And my favorite comment I can't read because it's a family-friendly show, but for those of you that are following our Facebook page, go look up Ed Becerra's comment.
Thanks for keeping it clean, Ed.
Yep.
Appreciate it, Ed.
Well, Jim, this was yours. Do you want to do the honors?
Shoot.
Should probably say what it is.
The answer is, it wasn't too far off. You guys had talked about like space launch activities, something like that. Spaceport. It's a thing that's been on the sectional now for a couple minutes. But that is where, basically what you said, there's space launch activity there. So watch out for rockets and alien activity heading up to the USS Enterprise.
Perfect. All right, should we do some comments on the Brian Turner post as well?
I think we have to.
All right, sounds good. Well, we'll start right back with Ed, who made it much more family friendly. He basically just sent somebody tell me, is it GIF or GIF?
It's GIF.
He sent an animated image of a cartoon plane doing a barrel roll that reminded me immediately of the game Star Fox from Nintendo 64 from back in the day. Barrel roll. Tom Cox called out that it's the preheat symbol, so he figured it out, that it's part of a diesel truck panel. So thanks, Tom, for guessing correctly and ruining our fun at the same time. Yancey says only cursive skywriting is authorized in that area.
Seems reasonable.
He also replied that some states are phasing out chemtrails, so the skywriters may need to go via far on top just to keep the tradition alive. That's it. I had a few responses. So to Yancey's, I asked if they're even teaching cursive skywriting in schools anymore, or if they've all switched up to the typing and Common Core fuel calculations. Yeah. Do we have a new one this week? I feel like being stumped.
Here we have in front of you, dear listeners, please locate this photo on the Facebook page. It is Southern United States. It is a tan block and a gray block, separated by a really thick magenta line and a spattering of weird-looking little warty magenta dots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Discuss.
So you see what this is this is the COVID containment area.
Oh my gosh, I was going to say that.
The gray area with the magenta dots, that's where COVID is the worst. Or before COVID, it was actually used to contain the measles. So, but when they cured that, they just kept the area, but now they use it for COVID. That's why the red dots, because of the measles.
Do you have any legitimate guesses as to what this is?
I figured
that to not sound like an idiot, I didn't want to make a real guess, and I thought I would just go straight sarcastic.
Fair. Do you have any guesses, however? I'm curious to see how much I stumped you.
Oh, no, I'm straight up stumped. That's why I went to sarcastic immediately. I have no idea what that is.
Oh. All right, Badger. Sorry your joke was taken. Do you have any serious guesses for me?
Well, I actually do have an alternate one. I was going to go with chickenpox rather than measles, but what it looks like to me is like a danger lava area, and so the gray part is where the lava has already cooled, and the red and the dots is where the lava is still hot and moving, and it's moving towards the tan area. So you definitely want to avoid some of those tan areas that are being overtaken for sure. In fact, I think there's a mountain next to it. I bet there's a Dante's Peak in there somewhere.
Well,
I'm sure that's way wrong. But
I hate to say that you were both, and you're going to be really mad when you find out exactly what this is.
Did you just say that we're not just wrong, we're incredibly wrong?
You're incredibly wrong. I wish we were a little less wrong, but that's okay.
Well, I was going to make a super cheesy comment about I'm going to make sure to like and subscribe and follow on all of my podcast players so that I don't miss next week's episode, so I find out what this is.
Hey, if you got a guess on what you think that sectional showdown item is, check out our Facebook page. You can see the actual image and then leave your guesses, sarcastic or not. Sectional Showdown is brought to you by our friends over at Pilot Quarters. If you want to check out your new favorite flying shirt, head on over to pilotquarters.com and check out what they've got. So should we jump into the news?
We absolutely should.
Well, I'll kick it off, and I will actually talk about a story that was brought up in our Discord channel by one of our Discord members, who his name is Tyler, but he goes in there as either Stan Kinator or the Stankinator. I'm assuming it's the latter of the two. He included a link in the Discord for his Instagram page where he talked about flying from Madison to go see the eclipse. So in his post, he talked about how one of his co-owners of the plane suddenly canceled at the last minute, so he was able to scramble together a plan, and he called down to some airports in Indiana to make sure that they'd actually have a place to park the plane and view the eclipse. So he actually was able to get in touch with people at the Indianapolis Metro Airport and confirm that they had parking there. So he got in touch with a couple of friends from the Milwaukee area and picked them up at my home base, Capitol Drive Airport in Brookfield, and picked up his friends and went on his way. He said on the way down, he did the Chicago Flyway on the east side of Chicago, which is along the lakeshore, which I've done it myself. It's a beautiful flight and highly recommend it, before stopping to refuel in Jasper County and eventually working the rest of his way to the Indianapolis Metro Airport. He said as far as watching the eclipse itself, it was absolutely stunning, and he could barely contain his excitement when totality began. He said that cameras really didn't do the eclipse justice, and that's been a common theme from everybody that I've talked to that was able to see it in person. Eventually returning home, he actually took the west end of the flyway back north around Chicago before refueling again at Jasper County, dropping his friends back off at Capitol, and then heading back home to Madison. So this was a really cool story that Tyler shared with us on the Discord, and a great example of using general aviation for a once in quite a while type of event. And he did want to point out as well that both facilities, both Jasper County and Indianapolis Metro, were awesome hosts and more than happy to have the general aviation traffic as well. So shout out to those airports as well. Thanks for sharing that, Tyler.
I will say I'm kind of jealous of those that got to participate in the eclipse. I debated it, but then I'll be honest with you, I chickened out at the idea of taking a day off, flying into the area where totality would be, and then having cloudy skies. So
Ooh, yeah,
I chickened out. I'm like, knowing my luck, it will be just complete overcast and I won't see a thing. So I stayed here where it was complete overcast. So I didn't see a thing.
And Tyler did actually mention that as well, saying he was worried at first because the morning was kind of cloudy, but they cleared out nicely for him.
Well, cool. What else do we got?
I got to see partial eclipse, so I didn't get to see the whole thing. I actually flew down. My student booked me for cross country that day.
On purpose?
And we went
because of the eclipse?
Yes, okay. Because of the eclipse. So he's ready to solo, but he wanted to go fly and see the eclipse. So he brought me glasses, and we just went a little bit south because we heard some airports a lot south of us were really, really crazy. So we didn't go very far. We got to about 85% totality. It was really cool to see. Like, even though it wasn't like fully total, it was really cool. But my buddy flew my boss's Aztec over to a place in Arkansas, and they were like, there was like 100 people there, or 100 planes in this little GA airport called Russellville in Arkansas. And they saw totality. It was super cool. I got pictures, and they actually gave everybody commemorative chalks with the airport name and the 2024 eclipse wood burned onto them. So we have those at the flight school.
Cool.
It's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. They were super, super great. They didn't charge anything. They had, a bunch of stuff there for all the pilots watching, which is a pretty cool experience. So there were actually a few flights that were kind of the eclipse flights, if you will. One of them was from Austin, Texas to Detroit, Michigan. So we get to talk about it. So some of these flights were booked over that time. And so a lot of people got on these flights just to see the eclipse from the air. So there were a lot of planes going back and forth that I saw that did turns when the eclipse was nearing totality, when they were in that belt. Everybody on the plane could see them, which I think is really, really cool. So this particular flight was totally in the line of the eclipse. And so in the middle of the flight, they did those turns for all the passengers, and people obviously got to see it. Super, super cool. Apparently this flight sold out 130 seats out in 24 hours, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, they actually added another flight from Dallas for the same thing, which also sold out in 24 hours. So clearly this is a big moneymaker. Apparently, it was a very jovial flight. People were cheering the entire time, which it was a 3.5-hour flight. So lots of joy. So apparently, the flight actually took a lot. It wasn't just a regular flight. It was a Delta flight, and it took a huge amount of planning with their meteorologists and then the flight superintendents and all of the other people who are in charge of the actual flying portion for Delta. So this was not just a, hey, let's send a plane through the eclipse kind of decision. It actually took some work, and the pilots actually were interviewed as well. So they said it was a great flight. They had an awesome time. They actually practiced this in the simulator, and it was still a challenge. So good for them.
Well, we've mentioned a couple of times that the path of totality has been pretty busy airspace, and we will go to Illinois to close out and really nail home that message by talking about Murfreesboro, Illinois, who actually had to shut down one of its runways to accommodate such a high demand of inbound aircraft. This seems to have been a trend on this past Monday throughout the entire country, as far as busy airspace for sure. Closing down a runway, I don't think was anything anybody expected. They took reservations for the Eclipse flights, and on the Friday before had already reached its maximum threshold. Forget this, 230 propeller planes and 45 larger jets and turboprops.
Wow.
And the airport manager said this is by far the most activity that they've seen, and obviously putting quite the stress on the airspace for sure. And so, of course, we're used to hearing delays for things like weather or busy traffic in high congestion areas like Chicago, LA, the New York area. But this is certainly a unique experience for a smaller, more local or maybe regional airport. And I can only imagine what departures would have looked like too.
Oshkosh levels of chaos.
Yeah, pretty much. Only without the organization of a NOTAM. Craziness out there. But I guess if you have a story about flying somewhere for the eclipse, we'd love to hear what you experienced. Was it super busy and crazy? Was it Oshkosh levels of chaos? Or was it just a busy day in the traffic pattern on a nice VFR day? Shoot us an email and we can read it on the next show, or let us know in the Discord channel. We'll start the conversation there as well.
My last comment on this subject is I don't know if this is legit. This is the problem with Brian Turner's channel, knowing whether this is satire or not. But he has a video about chasing the 2024 eclipse. Can an airplane fly faster than the shadow of the moon? Claiming that he stayed in totality for 30 minutes.
Wow.
I want to say this is satire, but I'll watch it later and find out. Or actually,
I watched it. It's 100% real for sure.
I was going to say I'm going to go back on that and say it's real.
Yeah, you know it's real because he released it the day of, so it's the freshest of news possible.
Did he release it during totality?
I think he was live streaming. It's just a live stream that he's so good at live streaming that it looks like a finished edited process. And but I think it was just a live stream for sure. Good to know.
Well, was he flying the Comanche?
He was flying the Comanche, which is totally fast enough. I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But he
it's 250, right?
I want to believe this is real. So don't ruin it for me. I'll watch it later.
Nope, it's 100% real. He does also mention when Concorde flew in totality as well, and he links that video, which is super cool. So
that is cool.
After you're done watching Turner's live stream of flying in totality, go check out the Concorde video.
Attention aviators. If you're passionate about flying, you need to check out Pilot Quarters. They are a pilot-owned family business based right in the Midwest in Michigan. They are on a mission to create your next favorite flying shirt. From comfy camp shirts to stylish polo shirts, sundresses, and tees, Pilot Quarters crafts unique aviation apparel. Choose from full-color chart designs, subtle overlays, or even wild tropical pattern blends with your favorite charts. Elevate your style and aviation passion. Visit pilotquarters.com today and soar in style. Aviation friends, let me share with you an absolute game changer in eyewear. I am personally hooked on Flying Eyes optics. Their stylish designs pair seamlessly with your headset for superior comfort. I used to fly with those cheap gas station sunglasses, but since switching to Flying Eyes, I can't go back. They're sleek, durable, and way more comfortable. Trust me, your eyes deserve the upgrade. Check out our affiliate link in the show notes, and make sure you use code FlyingMidwest10 for an unbeatable 10% off your purchase at Flying Eyes. Fly with comfort, fly with style. Visit Flying Eyes Optics today. Let's talk about some of the best active noise reduction headsets on the market. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just taking flight lessons, Lightspeed Aviation headsets are engineered with you in mind every step of the way. They've created the quietest and most durable A&R headsets on the market. Their high quality and innovative technology ensures you stay comfortable, connected, and safe in the cockpit. I've personally flown with Lightspeed for over a decade, and I wouldn't dream of flying with any other headset. Elevate your flying experience with Lightspeed. Check out our affiliate link in the show notes so that you can support the podcast with your next purchase. Aviators gear up for the skies with Flying Midwest Podcast merch. Dive into our latest edition, the striking Ghost graphic designs, available in long-sleeve tees, sweatshirts, and hoodies, perfect for your winter flying adventures. Head over to flyingmidwest.com/merch today and snag some of the coolest gear in aviation.
Jim, I asked this in full sincerity because it's been a while since the interview. Who do we have in this episode?
That's a great question. We're going to welcome Mr. Joe Harris. He is with the Metropolitan Airports Commission in Minnesota. They oversee the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, as well as a number of reliever airports in the system, and we're going to learn all about what they do for the aviation community in Minnesota. All right, Mr. Joe Harris, welcome to the Flying Midwest Podcast. We are super excited to have you here. We're going to talk about the Metropolitan Airport Commission and learn a little bit more about you tonight. So welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me, you guys. Look forward to the discussion.
Well, Joe, we're going to jump into our warm-up questions then. We'll do our Fast 5 questions with you. These are rapid-ish response questions. You can elaborate a little bit, but there have been some that have been known to take this to like a Piper Cub level of slow. So, in your opinion, coolest airplane that you've seen at an airport you manage?
It was really cool when Sun Country flew the 737 in the St. Paul Holman Field in a promotional event with the St. Paul Saints with the pig on board.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, that was a great Mike Vick, the Saints, longtime partners. It was named the Peg Day. When they came up with the crazy idea, go figure, St. Paul Saints and Mike Vick, crazy ideas. They just kind of are like a match made in heaven. I was like, I don't even know if we can even allow a 737 of Sun Country's ilk. And then, oh, by the way, what is going to be the public perceptions when all of a sudden they see the Sun Country airplane land at Holman Field, that all of a sudden we're going to have scheduled airline service, but the airfield could easily accommodate it. Obviously, they lightened the load, and there was a bunch of Saints players, a bunch of media, and they have a big to-do every year because they have a new peg every year that they name, and it was quite the promotional event, and it was absolutely a glorious day.
That is so awesome. So, Badger, since you're not cool enough to live in this state and understand what we're talking about, the St. Paul Saints have a pig that brings baseballs to the umpire and whatnot.
No kidding.
The whole thing. It's a lot of fun going to a Saints game. Next time,
in Badger, that the ball field is right in the shadow of the airport itself. Matter of fact, it's so close that the outfield lights the next time you cross the Lafayette Bridge actually have a red obstruction light on the top of it. That's how close the stadium is to the airport. So we'd like to consider we're kind of a partner.
There you go.
And every time a plane takes off out of Holman Field, the first one that yells plane gets a free beer.
It's a real thing. I was just at a game last summer, and when you're here next, Badger, if there's a game, we'll go. I'll take you to the Saints game.
All right, I'll take you up on it.
Next question. Least favorite plane that you have piloted?
The Decathlon.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, I did my spin training for my CFI training in it. I basically, to meet the mission of doing spin recovery, for some reason, I had no idea what was going on in that tail dragger. Haven't been in a tail dragger since. Got up and did our spins. Met the obligation of that particular lesson. Got signed off, and that's the last time I've been in that airplane or a tail dragger, period, that I personally flew.
Question number 3. Bucket list airport to log a landing in?
Yeah, great question. There's an airport. I actually worked for the Rhode Island Airport Corporation for about 16 months, and we had an airport out on Block Island. And my time there, I never physically flew out to Block Island. Took the ferry out there many times, but I never physically flew to Block Island, Rhode Island.
What's out at Block Island, for those that aren't familiar?
Oh, God, it's a very tourist type of town, mainly in the summer. It's got beautiful beaches, hotels.
Okay.
It's basically a tourist attraction. There are people that live out on the island. It's really small. It does have an airport, and I always wanted to fly out there, but I just never took the time or had the opportunity.
Maybe someday. All right, question number 4. Most underrated airport in the MSP area?
The MSP area, how far out from MSP are we going? Are we only talking the MAX 7 airports?
I think I'm going to let you take whatever liberties you want with that. If you want to expand it out, have at it.
You know, I think one of the best kept secrets of airports here in the Twin Cities is Crystal Airport. It's got an air traffic control tower. It's only a dozen miles away from downtown Minneapolis. Last year we had 45,000 ops there. We got a great flight school. It's just a great little airport to kind of get the Metroplex experience of landing as close as you possibly can to our downtown business district in Minneapolis.
Yeah, that is a fun little airport. I would agree. All right, and our last question, if you could meet and have a conversation with anyone in aviation, dead or alive, who would it be?
Great question. I am going to say Charles Speed Holman, the namesake of St. Paul Downtown Airport. I served as a manager down at St. Paul for about 5 years, read up on a lot of history of Speed Holman, and I was completely fascinated with his story. He died far too young in a crash out in Omaha, Nebraska, but he was Northwest Airlines' first pilot, and he was just, we got his flight certificate down at the airport. It was signed by Orville Wright. I would love to have a conversation with Speed.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That's so cool.
And I believe you guys, this is how big he was in the day when he died in the 30s. Over 100,000 people attended his funeral in the streets of St. Paul.
Wow.
Wowza.
Yeah,
That's
right?
impressive.
People.
Well, thank you, sir, for playing along with our Fast 5 questions. You did very well. Thank you. We're going to jump into the main section of our episode now. So, Andrew, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. So, Joe, for those not familiar, what is MAC, which, as I understand, is the Metropolitan Airports Commission? So what is it? What's your role in it? And what do you guys do for aviation?
We were created by the state legislature way back in 1943. So we just celebrated our 75th anniversary. The legislature in Minnesota had the foresight back then to say, you know what, we need a consolidated aviation effort amongst the airports here in the Twin Cities. So through enabling legislation, the MAC was created. So essentially, we have jurisdiction 35 miles out from both downtown St. Paul and Minneapolis. We have 7 total airports, which includes, obviously, the large hub commercial service airport that we're extremely proud of as an organization, and obviously gets great accolades here in the metropolitan area. MSP is just I think it's the best airport in the country. I really do. And then we also operate a system of robust general aviation airports that surround MSP with the hopes of relieving traffic for general aviation operations to happen at those facilities. And they include St. Paul Downtown, Anoka County Blaine, Crystal, Air Lake, Lake Elmo, and Flying Cloud out in Eden Prairie.
So for you, what came first, aviation or administration?
I think for all of us, in aviation, many of the people I know that kind of have my track, I mean, it was really kind of, be a pilot. So I'm a commercial pilot, multi-single CFI instrument, right? But this whole airport administration world, I didn't know a lot about when I kind of went to college and got into this racket. And then when I discovered the administration part, my father was in elected politics for 38 years. I have a strong calling to public service. And then when you look at entities like the MAC and the role that they have within the aviation ecosystem, I was immediately drawn to it.
Do you still fly a lot?
I fly as often as I can. I have a very, very good friend that owned a Malibu, spent a lot of time in that with him. Recently sold it, and now he's transitioned up to a Pilatus. So I try to go as often as I can. I absolutely love that airplane, and I love flying with that particular individual. I got 3 boys. My oldest just graduated from college. I got another one in college and one in high school. So my discretionary time is a little short, but I do try to get out and rent planes and be a part of it as much as I possibly can. Awesome. 20, 30 hours a year.
Yeah, I love hearing that you're still involved within the system and partaking in general aviation. That's what it's all about. So we talked a bit about kind of the foundation of MAC. What is MAC doing today in the aviation space for general aviation and even commercial aviation in the metro area?
Yeah, MAC is very misunderstood a little bit in the eye of the public, because let me talk a little bit about our governance structure, right? Our board of commissioners, 13 of the 15 are appointed by the governor. They have staggered terms, and then the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul each get an appointee to our board. of the governor's 13 appointees, the chair reports serves at the pleasure of the governor, and then there's districts within the metro area as well as the state of Minnesota to really get a broad, comprehensive complement of Minnesota interest into our aviation system down here in the Twin Cities. Because for the folks in St. Cloud and outstate Minnesota, MSP has a different meaning than maybe folks here in the Twin Cities area. We have an executive leadership structure that provides the day-to-day direction. It sets the vision, mission of the MAC. We're tasked with, the planning, the construction, the operational maintenance. We deal with the environmental stuff, the noise, right, of our entire complement of airports. And right now, Jim, when I first entered the MAC, we were about 350 employees. And at present time, we've grown to 700 over my 24-year career here at MAC.
That's quite some growth. Within these different districts, are you then fairly involved in the politics of these different communities that your airports lie in?
Yes. Politics in that we have a strong connection to all of our communities in which the airports lie within. So let's just take one example. You take Anoka County Blaine Airport, right? There's not only the city of Blaine, right, that's interested in knowing what's going on at the airport, and we're interested in knowing what's going on in those cities, right? How can we partner? How can we complement each other? As well as Mounds View, Circle Pines, Lexington, right? Even as far as way as Bethel, right? Neighbors to a little bit the west, Blaine, Coon Rapids, Anoka, etc. So we're working with their elective as well as their administration. Just again, us sharing with them any changes that are maybe going on at the airport or what the state of the state is at the airport. And then we also want to learn from them kind of things that are happening within their city. Because, right, we complement each other as kind of public assets.
Sure.
Is this idea of a consolidated aviation management service that you guys have, is that pretty common around the United States, or is this unique to the MSP area?
It is a little bit of a smorgasbord. We are one of the largest, the MAC is, as far as having 7 airports. Matter of fact, we like to say that when you add up the operations at the general aviation airports coupled with MSP's operations, we are the largest aviation organization in the United States. There are other airports who have 1, 2, 3, 4 airports. But we have a total of 7, which I believe makes us the largest. It's a good authority structure because we're kind of we're separate from county, we're separate from municipal. I mean, our board of governors can really set a direction and be able to make decisions and pivot to keep pace with our customers in order to have such a robust, dynamic operation that you guys see out there in the wild today.
So within your role with MAC, Joe, what does the day-to-day look like for you? Is there a typical day-to-day? Is it fairly fluid or something else?
Jim, I love my job because there's no template in day-to-day. I come into work and never know exactly what I'm going to walk into. I lead a group of about 30 individuals who are responsible for the business administration as well as the operational and maintenance, right? We have folks that you guys see out in the fields maintaining the facilities. My assistant director, Kelly Guerin, she's been at MAC 34 years. She runs the whole business operations, the governance structure, policy, ordinances. My phone literally starts ringing every day at 7 o'clock. It could be an employee issue. It could be a tenant issue, people looking for just help, answers, ask questions. And sometimes, I need to be flexible and be responsive to what some of those needs are because happy people means happy customers. But then there's also set meetings and stuff like that with our senior leadership team that you try to protect your schedule to participate in those meetings internally, which are important to the MAC as well as the relievers at my business unit that you try to keep as much as you possibly can. A lot of early mornings, a lot of late nights, and a lot of weekends. However, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
So with those 7 a.m. phone calls, are those mostly from people filing noise complaints for the airport? Is it advocacy groups? Who are you working with?
Sometimes they are noise complaints. At one particular airport out at Lake Elmo, in which we opened a new runway, those emails can start, and some of them have my cell phone number. They can start early. A lot at 7 a.m. is a bulk of my employees start working at 6, if not before. So a lot of things are already happening out at the airports operationally, things that they think I ought to know about. Maybe they have questions on things. Maybe it's this kind of information. Maybe it's, hey, we got staffing issues, or hey, we got something coming up with a particular business or an IROP type event. They just want me in the know. And I prefer direct communication versus emails and texts, all that other stuff. Let's talk about it. I don't get in the weeds, too much, right? There's people out there that are empowered to make decisions. But when you're running a very robust, last year our 6 reliever airports had 370,000 operations, right? That's Minneapolis, I think, had 323. So when you look at it, right, we had more operations in Minneapolis, so things are going to come up. But we also have management structures and systems in place that before it gets to me, they can deal with it. But the reality is, I'm a factory floor director. I love being at the airport. I love being in our maintenance shops. I love talking to the employees. I love them showing me exactly what they did to modify one of our pieces of snow removal equipment, or a piece of equipment that's going to help make their lives better or easier in taking care of the grounds and stuff like that. So, I just have a very intimate relationship with my staff that kind of puts me in the line of fire that, hey, let's give Joe a call. And quite frankly, I won't have it any other way.
That's fantastic.
I imagine a lot of these noise complaints, for example, come from airports at the reliever airport system. What is a reliever airport, and what's its purpose as far as general aviation and commercial operations?
The high-level Badger definition of a reliever airport is to relieve a commercial air service airport of congestion to make that airport as efficient as possible, right? Because airspace isn't infinite. So these general aviation facilities, we at the MAC really want to provide an attractive alternative to private and corporate aviation, right? Get them to use our facilities at the 6 other airports so they otherwise won't have to be based at MSP.
That's a good thing with how busy MSP generally is.
So that term would be synonymous with, I've heard, like satellite airports. Would that be the same?
Yeah. I've always known them as reliever airports. That's actually a definition that FAA refers to as a reliever airport. There's a very specific definition to it, kind of sort of what I just reiterated. But satellite airports is still used by a lot of our tenants who, have been out here for a long time. And then the other term I hear all the time, Badger, is secondary airports. And I just cringe at that. It's like, oh, geez, those of us who work so hard on these, it's like secondary seems like, well, who's first, right? We seem like we're an afterthought. But yeah, satellite is used. Secondary can even be used. But FAA's definition of our 6GA airports are really relievers.
Since this is a bit of a unique operation for a large-scale airport commission like the MAC, how do you work with the FAA? What does that relationship look like?
Maddie, the MAC has many partners. Obviously, the FAA is a critical partner of ours. We have conversations with FAA on planning, design, construction, environmental grants, right? Without getting too technical, they're a huge partner of ours. The good thing for us is the Dakota, Minnesota Airports District Office, which is the groups that airport works within FAA. This group nationwide, I don't know how many employees it is, but it's a really small slice of the overall personnel staff on FAA that actually is dedicated to airports. They are actually right across the street from my office here at Minneapolis. And so we talk frequently, with their engineers, their planning department, their environment, the office manager, and then you got the FAA part, right? Air traffic, right? 4 out of our 6 airports have ATC services, right? So you're working also with the managers out in the field, you're working with the FAA and the airway facility guys, people that take care of the nav aids and stuff like that. So we are fortunate that in my line of business, what makes it so exciting is we get to really work with all lines of business within FAA. And then locally, you work with them, but then you also deal with folks in the region in Chicago, and then from there, headquarters out in Washington.
So, Joe, do you prefer working more MSP type operations or the smaller general aviation airports?
Jim, I just prefer to be in aviation. I
Great
have
answer.
worked. I was hired at Mac in 1996 as an intern out of college and was fortunate to kind of continue on, and then eventually got hired full time. And I actually left because I pursued a professional flight career, which I flew all over the country in a light airplane for about 18 months. And then after doing that, I missed the work of what the airport does. And I actually then took a job out in Rhode Island, went out there for about 16 months, and then got hired back to the MAC. And I'm a Minnesota person. I was so glad to get back to the MAC. And I just love working for the MAC. I love, the work that we do and the role that we have in aviation. I mean, guys, let me tell you this. I mean, from our CEO down, Brian Ricks, down to the rest of the executive staff, we have a role to play within that aviation ecosystem, but you have a ton of people that are in your court as users of these systems to modernize them, develop them, take on the fights that we need to do in order to move them forward. Sometimes it might not feel like that. And I hear from users and businesses at time like, Joe, what you're doing, you should really do it like this. And we have good dialogue with our users. But to me, I've worked at, Jim, to answer your question, I've worked in the reliever since 2001. I was promoted to director, 4.5 years ago. I absolutely love coming into work every day. And I tell you what, the users and the people that I have met at our 6 general aviation airports, many of them I consider friends. We have good, healthy conversations, relationship. I'm a believe iron sharpens iron. And we've made a lot of progress over the course of the last 10 years with improvements into the airport based upon feedback that I and others have heard within this organization to put that to work. I don't know if I could leave that. Because I just love seeing the innovation of our businesses and what these airports mean to even our recreational and private users. I mean, these airports mean the world to them in many instances, and it just warms my heart.
So backtracking just a little bit, I know you mentioned it when we first did introductions, and you just mentioned it again about your attempt at a commercial aviation career. What happened with that, and what made you say, nope, I'd rather manage a bunch of airports?
You know what? I married my grade school sweetheart, and at the time, we just got married. And quite frankly, I didn't want to be gone away from her. We've raised 3 kids, and I quickly realized that, the pursuit of that job and the rigors of it, it just wasn't going to work for me. So that was a big thing. The other thing is some of it is, the late 90s wasn't the best market entry for pilots, mm-hmm. right? And again, when I got exposed to this whole MAC airport world, administration world, I knew that's exactly where I belong.
Did you go to school for that? I know airport administration is one of those bigger, if you want to be in aviation but don't want to fly, that's kind of what you major in. Did you go to school for it or get any special training, or did you kind of just hop in and go?
I mean, I took classes up at the University of North Dakota in airport administration and kind of general because I was always kind of fascinated with that, just when you could take electives. But really my whole focus up at school was, professional flight emphasis. But I think, Maddie, that has provided me with a level of technical background that serves me well in the job that I have today.
Absolutely. By
gaining that experience when I did, and then continue to kind of, do it as much as I possibly can. That I think makes me a better airport director today.
Brings me some modicum of comfort that somebody up there knows what's going on with airplanes. I feel like, not to get too inflammatory, but nowadays there's a lot of management that doesn't know how airplanes work, but they oversee airplanes, and nobody's happy. So it's really cool that you're doing what you're doing.
Are there any unique challenges that you have to manage as being the director of reliever airports? That I assume there's like a director of MSP or something along those lines that they don't have to deal with that's unique to your role?
Yeah, I tell you what, Badger, I don't think there's a role at Mac, no matter where you sit in the food chain, that isn't unique and challenging with all the different stakeholders that we serve, right? From the traveling public to users to partners, right? Taxi cab drivers to businesses. I think the best way to answer that question is my business unit, the reliever airports, we really take ownership that if it's a reliever issue, no matter what it is, if we got a sewer pipe that's backing up, or we got issues dealing with noise complaints, or we got planning process, construction, business administration, we own it. And we own it from cradle to grave. All right. And we're going to have some level of influence and some role in that process. At Minneapolis, certain business units, there might be a little bit more, okay, that's this team's role, okay? That's that team's role, right? MSP operations might strictly deal with anything airfield related at MSP, right? Everything going on within the AOA airfield. They're not necessarily get overly involved with a group of residents who are complaining about noise, right? And go to that meeting. On the relievers, we deal with it all from A to Z. Which I think is why I got some of the best team members here within the MAC, is because they get to round out so many different skills with the potpourri of topics that we get to deal with. Because again, if it's reliever related, somehow, some way, the reliever team is part of that process.
So the big question that I have, what does MAC have on the horizon for 2024? Any big projects you guys are working on, or?
Yeah, I think, Jim, I think the great thing is for the first time, we have over $30 million of planned capital improvement programs for the relievers. Now, this is in addition to $50 million that we've spent in the last several years at the relievers. So the investment that our users and businesses and commitment that they're seeing from MAC in enhancing our facilities is going to continue. $30 million, you might think, oh my God, that's going to buy you all new infrastructure. We have a lot of infrastructure, right? Our system is very mature. So we got to maintain what we have, right? Preserve it, but we also got to enhance our lighting, our nav aids, right? Changes with FAA design. So 30 million also doesn't buy you a lot, but I think our tenants greatly appreciate all the modernization that we're doing out of these reliever airports to improve them continuously. We're going to continue to stand strong with our users of within our system. I mean, 370,000 plus operations. These people are in general aviation, private aviation for a reason. They want to be able to fly on demand. And my team is going to stand ready to serve those people who, when they need to go out in a snowstorm, we're going to be there. When they need to fly, whenever it is, right, we're going to be there, posting the NOTAMs, making sure that they get out if they decide to go, right? That's our level of commitment, from a service level standpoint. To my team in the field, the amount of hours that they spend at work to be able to keep pace with that demand. I mean, some of these, St. Paul has a total of 5 field maintenance employees, Lake Elmo 2, Crystal 2, right? And then, Flying Cloud, 4. So these folks are dedicated because they get to know you guys as users. They get to know your voice. Let me tell you. Oh yeah, there's Jim. He's flying out again over on the east side, and we try to anticipate. Yeah, because we see you all. I think people in today's world who own airplanes place really a tremendous amount of value to having the MAC in their corner in providing those services. And we really, it goes a long ways when people let the guys know on the frequency, or, they stop by and send them a note. It really motivates them to even do better.
So if you're like some people listening, or some people co-hosting this podcast, if you're interested in working in airport management, what would you, as a manager of all things airport, what advice would you give to people who may be looking for a change or looking for a career just in general?
Maddie, I'll answer that in a couple of different buckets. If you're a young person just in high school, right? My youngest is a junior in high school, right? Doesn't necessarily know what he wants to do. If you have any interest in aviation, my family didn't know anything about aviation. My backyard neighbor that I shared a backyard with was a Delta pilot. That was my kind of connection to aviation. And then a friend got into it. And then I went to an airport and got to peek under the covers and was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But don't be afraid to come to the airport, right? We are creating spaces at all of our airports to invite the public in, because I know there's people out there that have a level of interest in aviation. Just come to the airport. Just sit at our picnic tables at our aircraft viewing area, and I will bet my life that one of our users, one of our tenants, will come by eventually, ask you what you're doing, and that's just maybe the door that you needed to be open to all of a sudden get to find out about what all this stuff is. And then obviously, hey, if you can get a job at one of the service providers or whatever, just get into the airport operations business. If you're older, I tell people all the time, MAC, again, is 700 employees. We have a police department. We have a fire department. We got painters, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, field maintenance folks, right? Admin people, CPAs. We got a legal team, right? We got an admin team. Whatever your particular trade is and background, you can possibly work at the MAC, because I guarantee you, whatever your background is, education, we probably have a position for you here at the MAC. It's just people think, oh, I got to be a pilot or I got to be an airport administration person. Yeah, if you want to be Joe Harris and kind of develop the traditional track that I did. But I would say within the MAC, there's probably about 15 of us that are cut from that cloth out of 700. So that's not the mold.
That's really awesome.
Interesting, yeah.
So if somebody wanted to get more information about MAC and what a job would look like there and potentially apply, where would they go?
You know, our airport, MSP, airport.com, you can actually sign up for job announcements and postings, and they'll be automatically sent to your email, every posting that comes up.
I think it is finally time.
Is there a final question?
There's a final
I'm
question.
getting nervous, you guys.
Uh-oh.
You should
This is the most critical question of the night, Joe. So
Can it be answered in one
Don't
word?
mess it up. Probably
Okay.
not.
You won't want to. Trust
Okay.
me. As a pilot, as an airport overseer and manager, what is your aviation unpopular opinion? The spicier the better, but no pressure.
It drives me absolutely bonkers when I see the TSA security line backed up at any airport and people are nervous already to get through TSA security to get on the other side of it, right? I just don't understand why we can't staff and process people much quicker than sometimes I observe, not only at MSP, but other airports. And that drives me nuts because, like my wife, because of that, she'll want to get to the airport 3 hours early. And if we get right through TSA in minutes, now I sit there and I'm fine sitting at the airport, but people now are just at the airport for the sake of being at the airport because they could not figure out how long it was going to take to get through TSA security. And don't get me wrong, our TSA partners are great. All the people that work the lines are great. And at MSP, I have this badge where literally I just show them and, get screened and able to walk right on through when I'm working. But when I'm traveling, I got to go through the bigger line. But that's always a frustrating pet peeve of mine, because even when I'm traveling, it's like I get to the airport way early, not knowing how long it's going to take to get through TSA.
I would have to say that, you know how people make aviation great? In this specific instance, sometimes people make aviation not great because inability to follow simple instructions, just from personal experience, makes it kind of difficult.
I sometimes just sit and watch the whole process on the backside, and I always said I should write a dissertation or something on just the different facial expressions and but it takes a lot of people in this industry, whether or not you're GA or commercial, to be operating on all cylinders. And I tell you what, here at the MAC, we're extremely proud. We just recently got awarded for like the best on-time performance airport in the entire world. And when you look at where we're at here, right? I mean, we got to deal with snow. A lot of airports don't have to. And oh, by the way, it's very dependent upon your airline partners, and it's very dependent upon your FAA air traffic, and very dependent upon, TSA security and curbside check-in and all the different people that, have touch points in between. And, that's something I know we're really proud of our aviation community here at MSP to be awarded that award. It's really quite remarkable, and everybody has a hand in that.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time tonight, and thank you for all that you and Mac do for aviation in this area.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm going to continue to follow you guys. So, regardless of what you do with this, you could dump this episode, but seriously, keep up the good work and keep spreading the message, and I'll just be following. So, just so you guys know. All right.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Joe, for joining us on this episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. Always interesting to hear what's going on in aviation in our region.
I've always wondered how Mac does things, and what they do.
Yeah.
You see them at the airport. Like, I was at Flying Cloud for several years. Like, I saw them all the time. But what did they do? I don't know. They drove around in yellow trucks. That's all I knew. So it's really cool to see exactly what the good people at Mac do for the airports in the region.
It is more than just taking your lease check. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The advocacy for even the smaller airports as well that maybe don't get all the attention that we think it should. It turns out they are getting the attention that it needs. It's just under the radar, so to speak. So it's awesome to have an organization like MAC out there looking out for the satellite airports as well. Well, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're in kind of a weird scheduling situation right now. So while we do have interviews lined up in the very near future, we're not entirely sure who will be our next guest. But stick around. Whoever it's going to be great.
Yeah, your guess is as good as ours.
Yeah. If you have an idea for a guest in the future, or if you'd like to be on the show, though, feel free to reach out to us, and we can try and get something on the books.
Volunteer your friends.
Or steal their phone and email us on their email. And we'll just drop them a link. Surprise, you're a guest.
Volunteer them.
Okay.
And while you've stolen your friend's phone, make sure you push the like, subscribe, and follow button on all of their favorite podcast players as well.
Make sure you also go on to all of their social media and follow us on their Facebook. Oh, and make sure to send us an email at flyingmidwestpodcast@gmail.com.
Air show season's coming up. And if you want to look great, you can check out our merchandise or our guys over at Pilot Quarters.
Correction, you always look great, but to look even better and to support us, you should absolutely get our merch. And support Pilot Quarters, because they've got really good stuff.
Ooh, one more shout out to Ed. He was wearing our Flying Midwest podcast
Let's
shirt
go.
when we
Rep
put much together. Yeah. So shout out to him and my buddy Jeff, who was also wearing a shirt at his Flying Club meeting last month. So thanks, guys, for supporting the show.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and until next time,
see ya!
See ya!
Zip!
Flight Chef 536, contact Minneapolis-St 132.35. Good day.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Flying Midwest podcast. Until next time, podcast service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. Good day.
When people go outside, sometimes they get sunburned.
Not during an eclipse, because you're not getting the sun then. But if you enjoy flying to tent camping and want to hang out with the Flying Midwest crew, the Flying Mid-Past, I think I was going to say.
Flying Midwest past our prime.
Yeah. So,
Well...
Now, quick, before anyone really dwells on that, let's talk about the other sectional showdown with Turner.
Well, we should probably answer what it actually is.
Fine.
Well, Jim, this was yours. Do you want to do the honors?
Shoot.
You should probably say what it is.
To Yancey's, I asked if they even are teaching cursive... oh my gosh, I can't even talk anymore.
Oh, shoot, that's right. I skipped all over that. Is
Good
that
job,
why you guys
Jim.
were looking at me funny?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was looking at you funny because you said pilot quarters. No, that's not it. It's pilot quarters.
No, I said pilot.
Oh, did you?
It didn't come across that way.
Okay.
So it was really funny
great.
to hear you correct yourself.
I know I said
you were
pilot.
correcting it.
I'm
Okay.
positive.
Pilot.
God, I'm tired. Sorry.
Jeez.
You guys do your thing. I'll be right here.
All right.
You know what?
It's
Yeah.
Mascarpone Mountain.
Yeah.
Marshmallow Mountain. It's
Yeah.
Marshmallow Mountain.
There you go.
Close enough. Sure.
Whatever the blind version is. Blind mute?
Whatever the blind version is.
Of the
I
camera.
think they call that camera off.
Well, you can put it on mute for the mic. What would you put the camera on? Blind.
Off.
Oh. It's the FAA. The F is for fun. Or no, the H is for happy.
The H was for happy.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Sorry,
you do
that was-
such a
that
good
was
job of making me sound better than I am.
It's a lot of
Okay.
work, though, I'm telling you.
I do want to real quick circle back to the TSA thing and point out that Milwaukee's General Mitchell International, the main commercial airport here in Milwaukee, has what they refer to as the recombobulation area, where
How do you
it's a
spell
specific
that?
area designated to put your shoes back. It's discombobulation, but instead of the dis, it's a re. And as far as I know, it's the only airport that has a recombobulation area. So you can put it on mute for the mic. What would you put the camera on? Blind.